She abandoned them with nothing but a dying animal and a few stale crackers, convinced she was sentencing them to a life of misery and failure. She drove away laughing, believing she had destroyed them forever. But she had no idea what she had just unleashed. What happened next will shock you, inspire you, and prove that sometimes the most devastating betrayal can become the foundation for the most incredible comeback. This is a story about a father who refused to let his children believe they were worthless, about turning humiliation into empire, and about the moment when karma comes full circle in the most unexpected way. The scorching Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the small ranch outside Austin, turning the dry earth into a furnace that seemed to mock every living thing beneath it. The air shimmered with heat waves that made the horizon dance like a mirage, and the sparse grass crunched underfoot with the brittle sound of broken dreams. Marcus, at 32 years old, stood frozen near the rusted gate of their property, his calloused hands gripping the metal so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Beside him, his daughter Emma, only 7 years old, clung to his work-worn jeans with trembling fingers, while 5-year-old Tommy pressed his face against his father's leg, trying to hide from the storm of angry words that filled the air. "This is what I'm leaving you with." Sarah's voice cut through the afternoon heat like a blade dipped in poison. At 29, she had once been the woman Marcus thought he'd spend forever with, but now her face was twisted with a bitterness that had been growing for months. The inheritance of failure. With a violent kick, she broke open the latch of the small barn that sat at the back of their 5-acre property. The structure was barely holding together. Weathered wooden planks, a tin roof that leaked when it rained, and a door that hung crooked on its hinges. From inside, startled by the sudden intrusion, came a weak bleating sound. The goat that stumbled out was a pitiful sight. Once, Daisy might have been a proud animal, but now she was nothing more than skin and bones. Her ribs showed through her matted white coat, her ears drooped with exhaustion, and her eyes held the dull look of an animal that had given up hope. "I'm done," Sarah announced, her voice rising to a shrill pitch that made both children flinch. "Done working myself to death for nothing. Done living in this dump that smells like hay and manure. And most of all, done looking at your faces every day reminding me of what a complete waste my life has become." Marcus felt the words hit him like physical blows. "Sarah, please. Think about the children." She laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth or love. "The children are yours now. You figure it out." She pointed at the sick goat with disgust. "Keep that pathetic animal. You'll fit right in together. Live in the barn if you want. That's where people like you belong anyway." As her final act of cruelty, she grabbed a canvas bag from beside her dusty pickup truck and hurled it toward them. The bag hit the ground with a dull thud, and a few stale crackers and an apple rolled out into the dirt. "There's your dinner. Don't say I left you with nothing." Without another word, she climbed into her truck. The engine coughed and wheezed before finally starting, and she drove away in a cloud of dust and exhaust fumes. The sound of the truck grew fainter and fainter until it was swallowed by the vast silence of the Texas countryside. Marcus stood there, paralyzed, as the reality of what had just happened sank in. She was really gone. She had left them, abandoned her own children, with nothing but harsh words and a dying goat. Emma began to cry, soft whimpers that broke Marcus's heart. Tommy looked up at his father with wide, confused eyes that seemed to ask a question Marcus couldn't answer. That night, after putting the children to bed on the old mattress they all shared in their tiny house, Marcus sat on the front porch steps and stared out at the barn. Inside, he could hear Daisy moving around restlessly, her occasional bleating a lonely sound in the darkness. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. "Live in the barn. That's where people like you belong." But as he sat there under the star-filled Texas sky, something began to stir in Marcus's chest. It wasn't defeat, it was determination. If Sarah thought she had sentenced them to failure, she was wrong. That barn, that sick goat, this piece of land, they weren't symbols of his failure, they were going to be the foundation of his comeback. "You threw us in the barn, Sarah," he whispered to the night wind. "But you have no idea what we're going to build from here." The next morning arrived with the harsh reality of survival staring Marcus in the face. He woke before dawn, not by choice but because Tommy had been crying from hunger pangs that twisted the little boy's stomach. The few crackers from Sarah's parting gift had been gone since the night before, and the refrigerator hummed emptily in their small kitchen. Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Swallowing what remained of his pride, he took both children by the hand and walked the 2 miles down the dusty road to the neighboring ranch. The Rodriguez family had lived on the adjacent property for over 20 years. Miguel Rodriguez, a weathered man in his 60s, with kind eyes and hands that knew the meaning of honest work, was tending to his vegetable garden when he saw the small family approaching. "Marcus," Miguel called out, straightening his back slowly. "I heard the truck leave yesterday and, well, it hasn't come back." His eyes moved to the children, taking in their rumpled clothes and the worried expression on their faces. Marcus's voice cracked as he began to speak. "Miguel, Sarah left us. She took everything we had saved and—" He paused, looking down at his children who were listening to every word. "I need help. I need to know how to take care of a goat." Miguel studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Come," he said simply. "Maria has breakfast ready, and the children look hungry." In the Rodriguez kitchen, which smelled of fresh tortillas and coffee, Marcus told the whole story while Emma and Tommy ate their first real meal in 2 days. Miguel listened without judgment, occasionally asking practical questions about the goat and the condition of the barn. "Daisy's sick," Marcus explained. "She barely eats, and I don't know the first thing about goats. Sarah always said I was useless with animals." Miguel stood up and put on his work hat. "Show me this goat." Back at Marcus's property, Miguel examined Daisy with the expertise of someone who had raised livestock his entire life. He ran his hands along her ribs, checked her eyes and gums, and watched how she moved. "She's malnourished and has parasites," Miguel diagnosed. "But she's not dying. She's just given up hope, like you almost did." He looked at Marcus meaningfully. "The question is, are you ready to fight for her, the same way you're going to fight for your children?" Miguel explained that goats were surprisingly resilient animals when properly cared for. "Daisy here, if she's the breed I think she is, could produce excellent milk, rich, creamy milk that people pay good money for. And if she gives birth, her kids could be the start of a real herd." He taught Marcus the basics that afternoon: how to clean the barn properly, what to feed a sick goat, how to administer basic medication, and most importantly, how to give an animal hope again. "The secret," Miguel said as they worked together to clean Daisy's living space, "is not to see her as a burden Sarah left you with. See her as the first employee of your new business." That evening, as Marcus tucked his children into bed, Emma asked the question that had been weighing on all their minds. "Daddy, is Mommy coming back?" Marcus looked into his daughter's trusting eyes and made a promise that would shape everything that followed. "Emma, I don't know if Mommy will come back, but I promise you this: we're going to build something so amazing here that whether she comes back or not won't matter. We're going to show the world what the Thompson family is really made of." That night, for the first time since Sarah's departure, Marcus felt something other than despair. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there. Hope. In the barn, Daisy lifted her head a little higher than she had in weeks, as if she too could sense that change was coming. 2 weeks after Sarah's departure, the real work began. Marcus had managed to nurse Daisy back to basic health with Miguel's guidance, but the goat was still far from the productive animal she could become. More pressing was the question of survival. Marcus had exactly $47 to his name, 2 children to feed, and a mortgage payment due in 10 days. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow who lived in town, had heard about Marcus's situation through the tight-knit community network that seemed to know everyone's business. She arrived at his ranch on a Tuesday morning in her ancient blue pickup truck. "I need help with my garden," she announced without preamble. "My arthritis is acting up something fierce and I can't bend over to weed anymore. I'll pay you $20 a day and you can bring the children. I've got a swing set in the backyard that's been lonely for too long." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Every morning, Marcus would load Emma and Tommy into his beat-up truck and drive to Mrs. Patterson's house. While he worked in her garden, pulling weeds, planting vegetables, and maintaining her small orchard, the children would play and Mrs. Patterson would spoil them with homemade cookies and stories about the old days. But Marcus's real focus was on the evenings. As soon as they returned home, he would spend hours in the barn with Daisy, implementing everything Miguel had taught him. He cleaned her living space meticulously, prepared nutritious meals from the vegetables Mrs. Patterson let him take home, and slowly, day by day, watched the goat transform. The change was remarkable. Daisy's coat began to shine, her eyes brightened with alertness, and she started to move with energy. More importantly, she began to trust Marcus, following him around the barn and even allowing Emma and Tommy to pet her gently. One evening in late spring, Marcus made a discovery that changed everything. As he was cleaning Daisy's stall, he noticed something that made his heart race. Daisy was pregnant. "Miguel!" he called out, running to the fence that separated their properties. "Miguel, come quick!" When Miguel examined Daisy, his weathered face broke into a wide grin. "Congratulations, my friend. In about 2 months, you're going to have at least 1, maybe 2 baby goats. And if Daisy's genetics are what I think they are, those kids are going to be valuable." That night, Marcus sat on his porch with a notebook and pencil, doing calculations by lamplight. If Daisy had twins, and if he could raise them properly, he could sell them for enough money to buy feed for a larger herd. And if Daisy started producing milk after giving birth, he could learn to make cheese. Something Miguel had mentioned was in high demand at the farmer's market in Austin. It was a plan born of desperation, but it was a plan nonetheless. The work intensified. Marcus began reading every book about goat farming he could find at the local library. He learned about breeding, nutrition, milk production, and cheese making. He built better fencing using scrap wood and wire he found around the property. He expanded the barn, creating clean, comfortable spaces for what he hoped would soon be a growing herd. Emma and Tommy became his eager assistants. Emma, with her natural gentleness, had a gift for calming the animals. Tommy, despite his young age, showed an unexpected talent for remembering feeding schedules and noticing when something was wrong with Daisy's behavior. The children were changing too. The trauma of their mother's abandonment was still there, but it was being replaced by something else: purpose. They had a mission now, a shared goal that was bigger than their hurt feelings. 3 months after Sarah's departure, Marcus stood in his expanded barn and looked around at what they had accomplished. The space was clean, organized, and ready for new arrivals. Daisy was healthy, alert, and very pregnant. And most importantly, his children were smiling again. "What do you think, Daisy?" he asked the goat, who had become not just livestock but a symbol of their resilience. "Ready to show the world what we can do?" As if in response, Daisy bleated softly and nuzzled his hand. The first chapter of their comeback story was complete. Now it was time to write the next one. On a humid June morning, Marcus woke to an unusual sound coming from the barn, a high-pitched bleating that he had never heard before. His heart racing, he threw on his clothes and ran outside, with Emma and Tommy stumbling sleepily behind him. Inside the barn, they found Daisy lying on her side in the clean straw Marcus had prepared weeks earlier. Beside her were 2 tiny, perfect baby goats, one pure white like its mother, and one with distinctive brown and white markings. "Daddy, they're so small," Emma whispered in amazement, kneeling down to get a closer look. Tommy pointed with excitement. "Look, that one is trying to stand up." Indeed, the brown and white kid was already attempting to get to its feet on shaky legs, its tiny hooves slipping on the straw. Within minutes, both babies were standing and instinctively searching for their mother's milk. Marcus felt tears he hadn't expected streaming down his face. These weren't just baby goats. They were proof that life could begin again, even in the darkest circumstances. They were hope, made flesh. Miguel arrived an hour later, drawn by Marcus's excited phone call. His experienced eyes examined the mother and babies with satisfaction. twins, both healthy, and look at those markings on the male. That's premium breeding right there, Marcus. You've struck gold. Over the following weeks, the entire dynamic of their small farm changed. The baby goats, whom the children named Sunshine, the white female, and Patches, the brown and white male, brought an energy and joy that seemed to infect everyone who visited. But more importantly, Daisy began producing milk, rich, creamy milk that Miguel taught Marcus to collect and process. The first time Marcus tasted fresh goat cheese made from Daisy's milk, he knew he had found their path forward. "This is restaurant quality," Miguel said, sampling the cheese Marcus had made under his guidance. "There's a farmer's market in Austin every Saturday. You should consider selling there." The idea terrified Marcus. He had never been a salesman, never been comfortable talking to strangers. But with $43 in his bank account and 2 children depending on him, fear was a luxury he couldn't afford. His first Saturday at the Austin Farmers Market was a disaster. Marcus had brought 6 small wheels of cheese, neatly wrapped and labeled Thompson Farm Fresh Goat Cheese. He sat behind his small table feeling completely out of place among the established vendors with their professional displays and confident pitches. After 4 hours, he had sold exactly 1 wheel of cheese to an elderly woman who bought it more out of pity than desire. But Marcus didn't give up. The next Saturday he brought samples. The Saturday after that, he brought Emma and Tommy, whose natural charm and enthusiasm about the baby goats drew customers to their table. By the 4th Saturday, he had a small but loyal group of customers who specifically sought out his cheese. "There's something special about this," one customer told him. "You can taste the care that went into it." Word began to spread. A local restaurant owner tried Marcus's cheese and placed an order for 20 wheels. A specialty food store in downtown Austin asked if he could supply them weekly. Slowly, incrementally, the money began to flow in. Marcus reinvested every penny back into the farm. He bought 2 more goats from a retiring farmer, improved the barn facilities, and purchased better equipment for cheesemaking. Emma and Tommy learned to help with every aspect of the operation, from feeding the animals to packaging the finished products. 6 months after the twins were born, Marcus stood in his expanded barn and counted 7 healthy goats, including Daisy, who was pregnant again. The cheese business was bringing in enough money to pay the mortgage, buy groceries, and even save a little for the future. That evening, as he tucked his children into bed, Tommy asked a question that made Marcus's heart swell with pride. "Daddy, are we going to be okay now?" Marcus looked at his son's trusting face and realized that somewhere along the way, they had stopped just surviving and started thriving. "Yes, Tommy, we're going to be more than okay. We're going to be extraordinary." Outside, the goats settled in for the night, their contentment a stark contrast to the single sick animal Sarah had left them with. The barn that was supposed to be their prison had become the foundation of their empire. 1 year after Sarah's departure, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. What had started as a desperate attempt to make use of a sick goat had evolved into Thompson's Artisan Goat Farm, a small but thriving business that supplied 3 restaurants, 2 specialty stores, and had a waiting list of customers at the farmers' market. Marcus had learned that success in farming wasn't just about the animals. It was about the story, the quality, and the connection with customers. People didn't just buy his cheese. They bought into the narrative of a father and his children who had turned abandonment into abundance. The farm now housed 15 goats, each with its own personality and name that Emma and Tommy had carefully chosen. The original barn had been expanded twice, and Marcus had built a proper cheese-making facility in what used to be an unused shed. The children, now 8 and 6, could handle most of the daily chores and were learning the art of cheese-making. But Marcus knew that to truly secure their future, he needed to think bigger. The opportunity came in the form of Janet Morrison, a food distributor from Houston who had heard about Thompson's cheese through one of her restaurant clients. She arrived at the farm on a crisp October morning, driving a sleek black SUV that looked completely out of place on the dusty ranch road. "Mr. Thompson," she said, stepping carefully around a puddle in her expensive heels. I've been hearing remarkable things about your operation here. Marcus, wearing his work clothes and smelling faintly of hay, felt suddenly self-conscious. But Emma, with the confidence that only children possess, walked right up to Janet and extended her hand. "Hi, I'm Emma Thompson, and this is our farm. Would you like to meet our goats? They're really friendly, and Sunshine just had babies last week." Janet's professional demeanor melted instantly. "I would love to meet them, Emma." What followed was a tour that showcased not just the quality of their operation, but the heart behind it. Janet watched as Tommy expertly demonstrated the milking process, listened as Emma explained the difference between their various cheese types, and observed the obvious love and care that went into every aspect of the farm. "Mr. Thompson," Janet said as they concluded the tour, "I represent a network of high-end restaurants and specialty stores across Texas. We're always looking for artisanal products with a story, and yours is exactly what our clients want." She paused, pulling out a business card. "I'd like to place an initial order for 200 wheels of cheese per month, with the potential to double that within 6 months. Marcus felt his knees go weak. 200 wheels per month was more than he currently produced in 3 months. I'm not sure I can fulfill that kind of volume," he admitted honestly. Janet smiled. "That's exactly why I want to work with you. You're not going to promise something you can't deliver, and you're not going to compromise quality for quantity. But let me ask you this. What would you need to meet that kind of demand?" That night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a calculator, a notepad, and a head full of possibilities. To fulfill Janet's order, he would need to expand his herd to at least 40 goats, build a much larger cheese-making facility, and probably hire help. The next morning, he drove to the bank in town, the same bank where he had once begged for an extension on his mortgage payment. This time, he was there to apply for a business loan. The loan officer, a young woman named Sarah Collins, the name made Marcus wince internally, reviewed his business plan with growing interest. "Mr. Thompson, your numbers are impressive. You've grown your revenue by 4,000% in just over a year, you have confirmed orders, and your profit margins are excellent." She paused. "I think we can work with you." 3 months later, the expansion was complete. Marcus had doubled the size of his herd, built a state-of-the-art cheese-making facility, and hired 2 part-time employees, Miguel's nephew Carlos and Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter Amy. Emma and Tommy, now seasoned farm kids, took pride in showing the new employees around and teaching them the Thompson family standards. "Every goat has to be happy," Emma explained seriously to Amy. "Happy goats make the best milk, and the best milk makes the best cheese." The first shipment to Janet's distribution network went out on a snowy January morning. As Marcus watched the delivery truck pull away, loaded with wheels of cheese that bore the Thompson's Artisan label, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. That evening, he called the children to the barn for a family meeting. 2 years ago, he began, looking at Daisy, who was now the matriarch of a substantial herd. "Someone told us we belonged in a barn with a sick goat. Tonight, I want you to look around and see what we've built from that insult." Emma and Tommy looked around at the clean, modern facility, the healthy animals, and the evidence of their success. "We built a business, Daddy," Emma said proudly. "We built more than that," Marcus replied. "We built proof that when someone tries to tear you down, you can use their cruelty as fuel to rise higher than they ever imagined possible." Outside, the goats settled in for the night, their contentment a testament to the care they received. The barn that was meant to be their punishment had become the throne room of their triumph. 3 years had passed since Sarah's cruel departure, and the Thompson family name had become synonymous with quality in the Texas artisanal food scene. What started with 1 sick goat had evolved into an operation with 63 animals, 8 employees, and distribution contracts across 4 states. Marcus stood in his new administrative office, a converted section of the expanded barn, reviewing the monthly financial reports. The numbers still amazed him sometimes. Thompson's Artisan goat farm was now generating more revenue in a month than he had earned in an entire year at his old construction job. But success had brought new challenges. Managing employees, maintaining quality standards across a larger operation, and handling the administrative side of a growing business required skills Marcus was still developing. Fortunately, Emma, now 10 years old, had shown a remarkable aptitude for organization and record-keeping. "Dad," Emma said, entering the office with a clipboard in hand, "Amy forgot to log the milk production from pens 7 through 10 yesterday, and Carlos says we're running low on the special feed for the pregnant does." Marcus smiled at his daughter's businesslike manner. She had inherited none of her mother's bitterness and all of her father's determination. "Thanks, Em. Can you remind Amy about the logs and I'll call the feed supplier?" Tommy, now 8, had developed into the farm's unofficial animal whisperer. He seemed to have an intuitive understanding of goat behavior and could spot health issues before anyone else. Just that morning, he had identified 3 animals that needed veterinary attention based solely on subtle changes in their behavior. The success of the farm had also changed their social status in the community. Marcus, once pitied as the man whose wife had abandoned him, was now sought after for advice by other aspiring farmers. He had been invited to speak at agricultural conferences and had even been featured in a magazine article about innovative farming practices. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of their success was the way it had affected his children. Emma and Tommy were confident, hard-working, and proud of what their family had accomplished. They spoke about the farm not as a burden they had inherited, but as a legacy they were helping to build. The transformation became most apparent during the annual county fair, where Thompson's artisan goat farm had won first place in the cheese competition 3 years running. As Marcus watched his children expertly handle questions from judges and visitors, he realized they had developed skills and confidence that would serve them well regardless of what paths they chose in life. "Mr. Thompson," called out Rebecca Martinez, a reporter from the Austin Business Journal, "could I get a few minutes for an interview? We're doing a feature on innovative rural businesses." The interview took place in the barn, with Daisy, now a grandmother many times over, serving as a living symbol of their journey. Marcus found himself telling the story he had told dozens of times before, but it never got old. Each telling reminded him of how far they had come. "What would you say to someone facing their own seemingly impossible situation?" Rebecca asked, as they concluded the interview. Marcus looked around at the bustling operation, the healthy animals, and his children working alongside their employees with quiet competence. "I'd tell them that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the foundation for the best thing that happens to you, but only if you're willing to work for it." That evening, as the family sat down for dinner in their newly renovated farmhouse, Tommy asked a question that had been on his mind. "Dad, do you think Mom knows how well we're doing?" It was a question Marcus had wondered about himself. Sarah had left no forwarding address, made no attempt at contact, and seemed to have vanished completely from their lives. "I don't know, son. But what I do know is that we didn't build this for her approval. We built it for us, and for our future." Emma nodded seriously. "And for the goats. They deserve the best care we can give them." Marcus laughed, reaching over to ruffle his daughter's hair. "And for the goats," he agreed. Later that night, as Marcus made his final rounds checking on the animals, he paused at Daisy's pen. The old goat, now the respected matriarch of the herd, looked up at him with wise eyes that seemed to understand the journey they had shared. "Thank you, old girl," he whispered, "for teaching me that even the sickest, most hopeless situation can be transformed with enough love and hard work." Daisy bleated softly in response, then returned to her peaceful rest. Around them, the barn hummed with the quiet activity of a successful operation winding down for the night. The barn that was meant to be their prison had become their palace, and tomorrow would bring new opportunities to build their empire even higher. 5 years after Sarah's abandonment, Marcus received a phone call that would change everything yet again. The caller identified herself as Patricia Hendricks from the Texas Department of Agriculture. "Mr. Thompson," she said, I'm calling to inform you that Thompson's Artisan Goat Farm has been selected as this year's recipient of the Outstanding Small Farm Business Award. The ceremony will be held in Dallas next month, and the governor himself will be presenting the award. Marcus had to sit down. The Outstanding Small Farm Business Award was the highest honor the state could bestow on an agricultural operation. Winners were featured in statewide publicity campaigns and often received significant business opportunities as a result. "There must be some mistake," Marcus stammered. "We're just a small goat farm." "Mr. Thompson," Patricia interrupted gently, "you've built a business that employs 12 people, supports local feed suppliers and veterinarians, and has put Texas artisanal cheese on the national map. You've also done it while raising 2 remarkable children as a single father. There's no mistake." The news spread quickly through their small community. Mrs. Patterson, now 83 and still a regular visitor to the farm, was so excited she baked 3 pies. Miguel, who had become like a second father to the children, beamed with pride as if Marcus were his own son. But the most meaningful reaction came from Emma and Tommy. Now 12 and 10 respectively, they understood the significance of the award and what it meant for their family's reputation. "Dad," Emma said that evening, "when you give your acceptance speech, will you mention Daisy? She's really the one who started all of this." "Of course," Marcus replied. "Daisy will definitely be part of the speech." Tommy, ever practical, asked, "Does this mean we're famous now?" Marcus laughed. "I don't know about famous, but it does mean that a lot more people are going to want to buy our cheese. Are you ready for that?" Both children nodded enthusiastically. They had grown up with the business and couldn't imagine life without the daily rhythm of caring for the goats and producing their artisanal products. The award ceremony in Dallas was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Dressed in a new suit that Emma had insisted he buy, he stood on a stage in front of 500 people and accepted a crystal plaque from the governor of Texas. In his acceptance speech, Marcus told the story of their journey, from a sick goat and a cruel abandonment to a thriving business that employed 12 people. He thanked his children, his neighbors, and yes, he thanked Daisy, which drew laughter and applause from the audience. "This award isn't just mine," he concluded. "It belongs to everyone who believed that hard work and determination could overcome any obstacle. It belongs to my children, who never let me give up. And it belongs to a goat named Daisy, who taught us that even the most hopeless situations can be transformed into something beautiful." The publicity from the award was immediate and substantial. Orders poured in from across the country. Food Network wanted to feature the farm in a documentary. A major grocery chain approached them about nationwide distribution. But with success came difficult decisions. The farm was already operating at capacity, and significantly expanding would require major changes to their operation and lifestyle. Marcus called a family meeting in the barn, surrounded by the goats that had made their success possible. "We have some big decisions to make," he told Emma and Tommy. "We could expand enough to fill all these new orders, but it would mean hiring a lot more people, building much bigger facilities, and probably spending a lot less time actually working with the animals." Emma, now showing the business acumen that reminded Marcus so much of himself, asked the crucial question: "Would we still be able to maintain the same quality?" "That's the question," Marcus admitted, "and I'm not sure of the answer." Tommy, who had developed an almost mystical connection with the goats, spoke up. "The goats are happy now because we know each one of them. If we had hundreds instead of dozens, could we still do that?" It was a wise question from a 10-year-old, and it went to the heart of their dilemma. They had built their reputation on quality and personal attention. Scaling up might jeopardize everything that made them special. After much discussion, they decided on a middle path. They would expand modestly, focusing on premium products and maintaining their high standards. They would train their employees to share their philosophy of animal care and quality production, and they would never lose sight of the values that had gotten them this far. "We're not just building a business," Marcus reminded his children. "We're building a legacy that will last long after we're gone." As they walked back to the house that night, Emma asked a question that had been on her mind. "Dad, do you ever wonder what Mom would think if she could see us now?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. But then I remember that we didn't do this to prove anything to her. We did it to prove something to ourselves. What did we prove? Tommy asked. Marcus smiled, looking back at the barn that had once been meant as their punishment, but had become the foundation of their triumph. We proved that no one can define your worth except you, and we proved that sometimes the worst insult someone can give you can become the greatest gift of your life. 7 years after Sarah's departure, on a rainy Thursday afternoon in March, Marcus was in the cheese-making facility, overseeing a new batch of aged cheddar when Carlos burst through the door. "Boss," Carlos said, his voice tight with concern. "There's someone at the front gate asking to see you. Says she's the kid's mother." Marcus felt the room spin slightly. In 7 years, they had heard nothing from Sarah. No phone calls, no letters, no attempts at contact. He had often wondered if she was even still alive. "Where are Emma and Tommy?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Emma's at school. She's got that advanced math class today. Tommy's in the barn with the new kids. Boss, what do you want me to tell her?" Marcus took off his apron and washed his hands slowly, buying time to think. "Tell her to wait. And Carlos, don't say anything to Tommy yet." As Marcus walked toward the front of the property, he could see a figure standing by the gate. Even from a distance, he could tell it was Sarah, though she looked dramatically different from the woman who had left them 7 years ago. Gone was the angry, bitter woman who had stormed off in a cloud of dust and fury. The person standing at his gate looked tired, worn down, and significantly older than her 36 years. Her clothes were clean but clearly second-hand, and she was carrying a small duffel bag that appeared to contain all her possessions. "Hello, Marcus," she said as he approached. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Sarah." He stopped several feet away from the gate, making no move to open it. "What do you want?" She looked past him at the transformed property, the expanded barns, the professional signage, the obvious prosperity of the operation. I've been following your success. The newspaper articles, the award." She trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. 7 years, Marcus said, his voice steady but cold. 7 years without a word. Not even a birthday card for your children. Sarah flinched as if he had struck her. I know I don't deserve. She started to cry, but they weren't the manipulative tears of someone trying to get their way. These were tears of genuine despair. "I've lost everything, Marcus. My job, my apartment, my car. I've been living in shelters for the past 3 months. And you thought you'd come back here, to the barn where you said we belonged. I made a terrible mistake," she whispered. "The worst mistake of my life. I know you probably hate me and you have every right to, but I was hoping maybe you could find it in your heart to give me a chance to see my children. Just to see them." Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation he remembered so well. But all he saw was genuine brokenness. "Sarah, those children have built a life without you. They've thrived without you. Emma is in advanced classes, honor roll every semester. Tommy has a gift with animals that amazes everyone who sees it. They're happy, stable, confident kids. Because of you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Because you were the parent they needed and I wasn't." At that moment, Tommy came running from the barn, having heard voices at the gate. He stopped short when he saw the woman standing there, his young face showing confusion rather than recognition. "Dad," he called out uncertainly. "Who is that?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she looked at her son, tall for his 10 years, confident, healthy, nothing like the frightened 5-year-old she had left behind. Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for weeks. "Tommy, this is your mother." Tommy stared at Sarah for a long moment, then looked at his father with an expression Marcus had never seen before. Not anger exactly, but a kind of cool assessment that seemed far too mature for a child. "The one who left us with Daisy?" Tommy asked matter-of-factly. Sarah's face crumpled at the simple question. "Yes," she managed to say. "I'm sorry, Tommy. I'm so very sorry." Tommy studied her for another moment, then shrugged with the casual dismissal that only children can manage. "Okay, Dad, Carlos wants to know if we should start the afternoon milking now or wait until Emma gets home. And with that, he turned and walked back toward the barn, leaving Sarah devastated by his complete indifference. "He doesn't remember me," she whispered. "Why should he?" Marcus replied, not unkindly. "You left when he was 5. Emma barely remembers you either, and honestly, Sarah, that might be a blessing." Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of sending Sarah away immediately, he offered her something she didn't expect: the truth. "You want to see what your abandonment built?" he asked, opening the gate for the first time. "Fine. Let me show you." What followed was perhaps the most painful tour Sarah had ever experienced. Marcus walked her through the entire operation, explaining how each expansion had been funded, how each innovation had been developed, and how Emma and Tommy had been involved in every step of the process. In the original barn, now just a small part of a much larger complex, they found Daisy, now ancient by goat standards but still alert and curious. "This is the sick goat you left us with," Marcus said. "She's the grandmother of half our herd now. When you told us we belonged in the barn with her, you had no idea you were giving us the foundation for everything we'd build." Sarah reached out tentatively to pet Daisy, but the old goat backed away, sensing something unwelcome in this stranger's presence. "She doesn't trust easily anymore," Marcus observed. "I wonder why." They continued the tour, past the cheese-making facility where Sarah could see the Thompson's artisan labels being applied to wheels of cheese, past the awards and certificates hanging in the office, past the photographs of Emma and Tommy at various agricultural fairs and competitions. "They've won scholarships," Marcus mentioned casually. "Emma for academic achievement, Tommy for agricultural innovation. The University of Texas is already recruiting Emma, even though she's only 14. 14? Sarah gasped. "But that would make Tommy 12, Marcus confirmed. "You've missed 7 years, Sarah. 7 years of birthdays, school plays, first days of school, nightmares, achievements, growing up. You don't get to just walk back into that." When Emma arrived home from school, her reaction was even more devastating than Tommy's had been. She took one look at Sarah, listened to Marcus's explanation, and simply nodded. "I see," Emma said in a voice that was polite but completely devoid of warmth. "Well, I have homework to do and then I need to help with the afternoon milking. Nice to meet you." The dismissal was so complete, so final, that Sarah actually staggered backward as if she'd been slapped. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Marcus found Sarah sitting on the front porch steps, the same steps where he had once sat in despair, planning their comeback. "They hate me," she said without looking up. "No," Marcus replied, sitting down a few feet away from her. "They don't hate you. That would require caring about you enough to feel strong emotions. They're indifferent to you, which is much worse." Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was hollow. "I thought I could come back and I don't know what I thought. That you'd all be struggling still, maybe? That you'd need me? We needed you 7 years ago," Marcus said quietly. "When Tommy had nightmares and cried for his mother. When Emma asked me why Mommy didn't love us anymore. When I had to explain to their teachers why there was no emergency contact except me. We needed you then, and you weren't here. I was scared," Sarah whispered. "I was angry and scared, and I thought you'd all be better off without me." "Maybe we were," Marcus said, and the simple honesty of it cut deeper than any accusation could have. "But that's not the point. The point is that you didn't just leave us, Sarah. You tried to destroy us on your way out. You told us we belonged in the barn, that we'd never amount to anything. You tried to make us believe we were failures." Sarah looked around at the obvious prosperity of the farm, the clean buildings, the expensive equipment. "But you proved me wrong." "No," Marcus corrected. "We proved ourselves right. There's a difference." Marcus allowed Sarah to stay in the small guest room above the old barn for 3 days. Not out of kindness exactly, but because he wanted his children to have closure, to see for themselves what their mother had become. On the second day, Sarah made one last, desperate attempt to connect with Emma and Tommy. She approached them while they were doing their afternoon chores, feeding the younger goats. "Emma, Tommy," she began tentatively. "I know I have no right to ask, but could we maybe talk?" I'd like to explain. Emma didn't even look up from the feed bucket she was filling. Explain what? That you abandoned your children because you were selfish? That you told us we'd never amount to anything? That you tried to make us believe we were worthless? I was wrong, Sarah said desperately. I was so wrong about everything. You've both become such incredible people, and this place... She gestured around at the thriving farm. What your father has built here is amazing. What we built, Tommy corrected quietly, still not looking at her. Dad didn't do this alone. We all did it together. That's what families do. The emphasis on families was like a knife to Sarah's heart. You are my family, she pleaded. You're my children. This time Emma did look up, and the cold assessment in her 14-year-old eyes was devastating. No, she said with calm certainty. A family is people who stick together through hard times, who support each other, who never give up on each other. You gave up on us before you even tried. Tommy nodded in agreement. Besides, we already have a family. We have Dad, and we have each other, and we have Miguel and Mrs. Patterson and Carlos and Amy and all the people who actually care about us. Sarah tried one more approach. I'm your mother. You're the woman who gave birth to us, Emma corrected. But Mrs. Patterson has been more of a mother to us than you ever were. She taught me to bake, helped me with my homework, and she never once made me feel like I wasn't good enough. That evening, Marcus found Sarah packing her small duffel bag. Leaving? He asked from the doorway. They don't want me here, she said without turning around. And they're right not to. I threw away the most precious thing in the world, and I don't get to have it back just because my life fell apart. Where will you go? Sarah shrugged. There's a women's shelter in Austin. I'll figure something out. I always do eventually. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is $500. It's not charity, it's practicality. I don't want my children wondering if their biological mother is sleeping on the street. Sarah took the envelope with trembling hands. Thank you. Don't thank me, Marcus said. Thank them. They're the ones who convinced me you deserved basic human dignity, even if you never showed it to us. The next morning, Sarah stood at the gate one last time, looking back at the property that should have been her home. Marcus, Emma, and Tommy stood together watching her, a united family that had been forged in the fire of her abandonment. I'm proud of you, she called out, her voice carrying across the distance. All of you. You built something beautiful from the ugliness I left behind. Emma stepped forward slightly. We didn't build it from your ugliness, she said, her young voice carrying clearly in the morning air. We built it despite your ugliness. There's a difference. Tommy nodded in agreement. And we built it because Dad taught us that when someone tries to tear you down, you use their cruelty as fuel to rise higher than they ever imagined possible. Sarah's shoulders sagged as the truth of those words hit her. She had tried to destroy them and instead had given them the motivation to create something extraordinary. As her taxi pulled away, Marcus put his arms around his children, his real family, forged not by blood, but by shared struggle and mutual devotion. Are you okay? He asked them. We're perfect, Emma replied, leaning into her father's embrace. We always were, even when she tried to make us believe we weren't. Tommy looked back at the thriving farm, the healthy animals, the evidence of their success. Dad, do you think she finally understands what she threw away? Marcus considered the question as they walked back toward the barn. Their kingdom, their proof that love and hard work could overcome any cruelty. I think she's beginning to, he said, but it doesn't matter what she understands now. What matters is what we understood then, that we were worth fighting for, even when the person who should have fought for us gave up instead. That afternoon, as the family went about their daily routines, feeding the goats, checking the cheese production, planning for the next day's farmer's market, the ghost of Sarah's abandonment finally felt truly laid to rest. The barn where she had tried to bury them had become their palace. The sick goat she had left them with had become the foundation of their empire, and the children she had thrown away had become confident, capable young people who knew their own worth. 7 years after being told they belonged in a barn with a sick goat, The Thompson family had proven that sometimes the cruelest words can become the greatest gifts if you have the courage to transform them into something beautiful.